The Martian playground was a mess of synthetic sand, rust-colored skies, and the smell of recycled protein bars. Felix Merrick, 10 years old, proud owner of a lopsided bowl cut and an overinflated sense of drama, stood atop the jungle gym declaring war on boredom. His mother had told him to go make friends with the aliens. But Felix had learned that phrase didn't include real advice like, what do you say to someone whose veins glow when they sneeze? Zephyra, by comparison, was terrifying in the quiet way only alien children could be. She had long pointed ears, a soft shimmer to her pale blue skin, and eyes like nebulae in miniature, violet, stormy, and mildly judgmental. She didn't laugh. She didn't eat the protein bars. She just sat there on the edge of the sandbox, drawing precise spirals in the dust with her fingers, like she was calculating the emotional entropy of the universe. Felix, emboldened by a recent viewing of Star Nights of Earth, leapt down from the jungle gym, brushed off the Martian dust with one exaggerated sweep of his elbow, and strode over. Lady Zephyra of the Stars, he said, trying to sound like the actor from the movie who had eyebrows like angry caterpillars. Marry me. Zephyra looked up. Her spirals paused. One ear twitched, the way a cat's might when hearing interdimensional interference. Yes, she said. Felix blinked. Wait, what? I accept your union proposal, she said matter-of-factly. By the laws of the Orion Accord, your words bind us through the rite of first vow. Felix laughed, relieved. Ha! Good one. You're joking. That was a joke, right? Zephyra tilted her head. We do not joke with vows. Felix backed away slowly and spent the rest of recess pretending to be a malfunctioning robot. Years passed. Felix forgot. Zephyra didn't. Now 26, Felix Merrick worked in Earth's sub-office for Xenobotanical Inventory, Level 9. His job mostly involved mislabeling spore samples and pretending he wasn't allergic to 6 types of alien pollen. His life was unremarkable, save for his unmatched ability to get locked in the self-cleaning storage closets, a fact his co-workers celebrated with a tally board and an annual award ceremony. So when his compad flashed urgent interstellar diplomatic posting, you have been selected, his first reaction was to assume it was spam. Sure, and next I'll be ambassador to the Moon Cheese Confederacy, he muttered, swiping away the alert. 2 hours later, he was escorted from the lab by 3 people in silver uniforms, given a mandatory haircut, and loaded onto a diplomatic cruiser called the Promise Keeper. The irony wasn't lost on him. The ship smelled like citrus and existential dread. Felix sat across from a bureaucratic liaison with half-cybernetic eyebrows and a voice like soft static. Congratulations, Consort Merrick, the liaison said. Pardon? You are being transported to Orion Prime. Your diplomatic classification has been confirmed via archive. Culturally bonded to High Matron Designate Zephyra. Felix's brain short-circuited. Culturally bonded? To who? Zephyra? Correct. Please enjoy the complimentary pre-bonding herbal tea in this commemorative sash. I don't want a sash, Felix hissed, even as the liaison gently draped it over his shoulders. It had glittery embroidery and smelled faintly of peppermint and panic. As the cruiser approached Orion Prime, Felix sat gripping the edge of his seat. Okay, he mumbled to himself. This is just a mistake, a glitch. Like that time the cafeteria drone thought I was authorized to test chili at critical heat levels. Orion Prime loomed in the viewport, a beautiful swirl of crystal terrain and cities suspended in atmosphere like dream architecture. The planetary AI guided the cruiser to a landing dock made of shifting crystal petals. Felix stumbled out, sash askew, and found himself facing a crowd of aliens, all dressed like space royalty. A large banner unfurled above them. Welcome, Consort Designate. He leaned toward the nearest Orion official. Quick question, what exactly does Consort Designate mean? The official beamed. It means you are the chosen mate of our future matron. May your bonding ceremony be eternally fruitful. Felix's legs buckled slightly, but he recovered with the grace of a man trying not to faint on live interplanetary broadcasts. His face now adorned billboards in at least 3 languages, one of which appeared to be sung rather than spoken. A procession began. Felix, awkward and sweating, was escorted past floating musicians and dancing jellyfish lions. He kept trying to duck behind a ceremonial urn, but it followed him, hovering politely. Finally, Zephyr emerged. She was taller now, still with those long, impossibly expressive ears and eyes that seemed to study everything he wasn't saying. She wore armor stitched with strands of starlight and carried a small, glowing blade at her hip. "Felix Merrick," she said, her voice both warm and unyielding. "You have returned." Felix opened his mouth to explain that this was all a mistake, that he hadn't meant it, that kids say weird things when they're hopped up on Martian oxygen ratios and dried mango slices. But then she smiled, just a little, and the thought got stuck somewhere between his throat and his brain. "Hey," he managed. You look different, in a glowy, majestic kind of way." "You appear slightly taller," she said diplomatically, "and your ears have not improved." "Thanks. I moisturize them daily." A small chuckle escaped her, and Felix blinked. Did he just make a galactic dignitary laugh? "I never forgot your vow," she said. "No one speaks such words lightly on my world." "I was 10, he squeaked. "I also declared war on a vending machine that week." Zephyr raised one elegant eyebrow. "So your war record is impressive." Felix sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Okay, time out. There has to be a way to politely say, this was a childhood misunderstanding, and also possibly influenced by a poorly dubbed Earth film." She looked at him carefully. "You wish to rescind your vow?" "No, yes. Look, can we start with coffee?" Zephyr tilted her head. "You wish to begin the bonding rites with bean liquid?" "It's tradition," he said desperately. "Very sacred. On Earth." "Very well," she said. "I will alert the barista priests." Felix realized with dawning horror that she wasn't joking, and the terrifying thing was, some part of him wasn't either. Felix sat stiffly at a table made of softly humming crystal, across from a ceremonial espresso machine that looked like it had been built by a time-traveling watchmaker with anxiety issues. It hissed steam and occasionally whispered ancient Orion poetry into the froth. Zephyr watched with polite solemnity as a priest in a latte-colored robe finished the final swirl on Felix's cappuccino, then bowed and floated away on a cushion of mild telekinesis. "Are you certain?" she asked. "This is the correct sequence of Earth bonding?" Felix sipped cautiously. "Absolutely. No proper Earth courtship begins without caffeinated regret." She nodded and sniffed her cup. "It smells like ancient mud mixed with optimism." That's basically the tagline for every date I've ever been on. Across the garden pavilion, translucent fish hovered through the air in slow loops, casting refracted rainbows over the ceremonial hedges, trimmed into the shape of earth dogs, though one suspiciously resembled an octopus in a hat. Zephyr gestured to it. "Your earth creatures are oddly geometrical." "That one's supposed to be a pug, I think." "It looks like an ambassador from the Kraken Consortium." "Same energy." There was a long pause. Felix cleared his throat and traced a finger along the edge of his saucer. "Listen, Zephyr, about the vow. I didn't know it meant something real to you." "You invoked the binding phrase during youth rite," she said. "In my culture, those words carry the intent of the soul." "I was trying to make the other kids laugh." "You did," she said, "but I also cried." That knocked the wind out of him. Felix stared at his cup, which had started stirring itself as if embarrassed for him. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," she said softly. "You gave me a promise to hold on to when everything else was uncertain." Felix rubbed his temples. "And now I'm a diplomatic consort with no formal training, no matching armor, and a sash I'm pretty sure is haunted." She smiled. "We do not expect you to be perfect, only present." That was oddly comforting. Less comforting was the arrival of a new guest, 7 feet tall, emerald-skinned, and carrying a ceremonial clipboard. "This is Archivist Nall," Zephyr said. "He will verify your trial readiness index." Felix blanched. "I'm sorry. My what?" "Before our union may proceed, you must complete several culturally significant tasks," Nall intoned, checking a box labeled Emotional Endurance Level. "Fragile meatling." Zephyr handed him a thin scroll that unrolled to a length longer than Felix's last relationship. "These are the pre-bonding rites." Felix scanned it. Solve a riddle from the Elder Sphinx of Varnic Prime. Bond with a sky eel. Cook a traditional Orion nutrient loaf under combat conditions. Attempt the dance of 7 gravities. Wait, what? Zephyr leaned in. You may skip the eel if you are allergic to cosmic mucus. He swallowed. So it's like interstellar marriage boot camp? It is a journey of the spirit, Nall corrected, and a test of one's ability to survive awkward ceremonial nudity. Felix nearly choked on his cappuccino. I'm sorry, what kind of... Embrace the journey, Zephyr said serenely. Also, the nudity is symbolic. Mostly. Within hours, Felix found himself in a cavernous ritual dome made of moonstone glass, standing beside Zephyr, both of them wearing gravity-modulated jumpsuits with questionable insulation. A choir of semi-sentient bells echoed throughout the chamber as an AI instructor named Chancellor Wigglebite briefed them on the first task. You must complete a tandem perception trial, Wigglebite chirped. Your minds will be linked temporarily. Success depends on empathy, memory accuracy, and your ability to not scream when faced with existential metaphors involving fish. Felix adjusted his helmet. That's a pretty specific warning. Trial begins in 3, 2, mind link initiated. The world blurred. Then suddenly, Felix stood inside a simulated Earth bedroom from his childhood, except it was upside down, floating through an aquarium of stars. Zephyr was there too, flipping through a holographic photo album that whispered fragments of Felix's thoughts. Is this your mother? She asked, pointing to an image of a stern-looking woman in a lab coat with an unfortunate bang situation. Yeah, Felix muttered. She taught xenobotany, believed every emotion could be solved with properly pruned moss. Zephyr touched the memory gently. You feared her disappointment, Felix shrugged. Still do, a little. The simulation shifted. Now they stood in the playground on Mars the day of the proposal. Felix watched his younger self kneel dramatically. Zephyr watched her younger self light up like a binary star. I thought I was being clever, he whispered. I didn't know I was anchoring someone. You didn't just anchor me, Zephyr said. You reminded me that someone could choose me, freely, without politics or rank. The simulation dissolved. They returned to the dome. Wigglebite did a little celebratory cartwheel. You scored 92 empathy units, above average for bonded organics. Zephyr gave him a look of quiet admiration. Felix, dazed, said, That was actually kind of meaningful. Do not worry, Wigglebite added. Next trial involves significantly more screaming. Felix groaned. Of course it does. Their next task, the infamous Nutrient Loaf Combat Challenge, took place in a plasma kitchen suspended over a pit of polite lava. The kitchen assistant was a grumpy AI named Glorp, who only communicated in Shakespearean insults. Zephyr diced alien root vegetables with graceful precision. Felix, meanwhile, discovered that Orion spatulas doubled as both cooking tools and bludgeoning devices. This thing just growled at me, he said, pointing to a tuber. It senses weakness, Zephyr replied. I'm not even sure which part is the edible one. All of it, she said, except the screaming core. Felix took a deep breath and stabbed the tuber. It hissed, then turned into a custard. What just happened? You passed the test, Zephyr said. The root fears confrontation. They plated the nutrient loaf on anti-gravity platters shaped like orbiting moons. Glorp made a noise that might have been approval or a literary sneeze. That was absurd, Felix said, covered in starch and pride. Most things worth doing are, Zephyr replied. That night, back in his guest chamber, Felix stared at the stars through a crystalline window. He had nearly been married by accident. He had danced in 7 gravities. He had mind-melded with someone who saw more of him than he usually allowed. And weirdest of all, he didn't want to run. He wanted to see what came next, even if it involved more eels. Felix awoke to a holographic rooster crowing at a volume scientifically calibrated to induce panic in light sleepers. He flailed, slapped it, and promptly fell out of bed, entangling himself in the ceremonial sash he'd accidentally slept in. The sash beeped. Please do not strangle yourself before the ritual of clarity. He groaned, dragged himself upright, and blinked at the floating agenda hovering at the foot of his bed. It listed his schedule in glowing green text. 8 a.m. Media orientation with Galactic News Sphere, 9:15 a.m. Emotional calibration with the Whispering Crystals of Tharn 11 a.m. Public bonding display rehearsal, mandatory handholding, 12:30. Lunch with Zephra's grandmother, retired High Warlord, 1400. Diplomacy etiquette, simulation with AI moderators, sassy mode enabled. Felix squinted. Which sadist made this itinerary? The sash vibrated. It was designed collaboratively by the Union Council of Orion and a former stand-up comedian from Jupiter's moon stations. He stumbled into the dressing unit, which sprayed him with perfume synthesized from moon lilies and regret, then teleported him directly to a glass-floored conference chamber floating 100 meters above the palace gardens. Inside, spherical journalists orbited like curious planets, recording everything with unsettling enthusiasm. "Consort Merrick," boomed a sphere with a deep synth voice. "What message do you have for younglings across the galaxy watching your unlikely ascension?" Felix blinked. "Eat breakfast. Don't propose to strangers. And never trust a vegetable that growls." There was a moment of silence, then laughter. Good. Maybe he could ride this wave of accidental fame straight into survival. The spheres began a chant in 5 languages. "Felix! Felix! Felix!" It was catchy. It was terrifying. He was rescued by Zephra, who swept in like a nebula in motion. Her gown shimmered with coated starlight and possibly mild sarcasm. "I see you're bonding well with the media," she said, arching an eyebrow. "I'm considering making them my entourage. I could be the first man to found a political career entirely by accident." "You already are." They walked together across the glass floor. Beneath them, translucent fish spelled out #ForeverFelix in synchronized formation. He tried not to hyperventilate. "I'm starting to think your people have a very enthusiastic concept of romance," he muttered. Zephra paused beside him. "It is not romance they admire. It is commitment. We are a culture shaped by oaths and starlight. You represent the rarest of bonds, one born in innocence, remembered in earnest, and returned to in courage." Felix opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Okay, sure, that sounded poetic until you remember I was 10 and pretending to be a space knight with a spoon." "Yes," she said, "and I was an alien child trying to survive my first interspecies contact experience while eating unseasoned earth pudding. You saved me from social exile. With a spoon." Felix rubbed the back of his neck. "We were both weird kids, huh?" "The best kind." They rehearsed the public bonding display in front of a delegation of elders and several bored-looking diplomatic drones. The instructions were precise. 3 minutes of hand-holding, synchronized foot placement, and an optional smile that had to convey interstellar unity without being visibly sweaty. Felix tried. He really did. But he stepped on Zephra's foot twice and accidentally smiled in a way that triggered a holographic confetti burst labeled "Fertility Imminent." Zephra laughed. "You may be the first consort in history to misfire a fertility blessing." "I'm honored and very confused." At lunch, things got worse. Zephra's grandmother, High Warlord Emeritus Tal Zena, the Thunder Swan, sat on a throne shaped like a falling star. Her cybernetic jaw whirred as she chewed slowly on a tentacle pastry, eyes glowing like sunrise over a battlefield. "You," she growled at Felix, "smell like indecision." Felix froze. "That might be the ceremonial lotion. It has notes of basil and dread." She narrowed her eyes. "What are your intentions toward my granddaughter? To not accidentally start a war?" Tal Zena leaned forward. "Have you ever lifted a neutron pike?" "I once carried my groceries without a bag." "Good," she said. "Spine counts for something. Eat the jelly root." Felix looked at the quivering blue mass on his plate. "Is it sentient?" "Not anymore." He took a bite. His vision briefly shifted into infrared. Tastes like static." Zephra leaned over. "You're doing surprisingly well." "I'm mostly pretending I'm in a cooking show called Don't Die Galactic Edition." The afternoon brought him to a diplomacy simulator, a high-stress virtual environment where AI moderators tested his patience, integrity, and reflexes with increasingly absurd scenarios. Scenario 1. Prevent a civil war between two species fighting over the rights to a sentient sandwich. I propose we eat the sandwich together, Felix said. You've insulted both parties, the AI said. They now seek your head as an appetizer. Scenario 2. Calm a planetary leader undergoing an emotional meltdown because a comet ruined her birthday. Have you considered therapy and cake? Felix offered. The AI blinked. You have restored planetary equilibrium. Scenario 3. Zephyra enters and tells you she has to leave the engagement for political reasons. Do you? I tackle the simulation, Felix said without thinking. The AI paused. That was not an option, but statistically promising. When the simulation ended, Felix sat panting on a holographic bench while Zephyr joined him. I think I survived, he muttered. You did more than that. You made 3 moderators glitch and 1 fall in love with your improvisational dance diplomacy. He looked at her. You're not seriously going to marry me because I made a childhood joke, right? Zephyr tilted her head. I'm not marrying you because of a joke. I'm marrying you because you stayed. He swallowed. Even if I screw up every ceremony. Especially then. Later that night, he found himself in a quiet corridor, staring at the stars through a massive window. The sash rested lightly on his shoulders. For once, it didn't itch. He thought of spoons, Martian sand, and a girl who took his jokes seriously when no one else had. He smiled. Maybe, just maybe, she was on to something. Felix was brushing his teeth with a sonic wave brush that sang soothing affirmations in 6 galactic dialects when the walls of his quarters shimmered and blinked red. A diplomatic alert flashed into the air. Rival suitor en route. Claim conflict initiated. Protocol. 77. Honor by contest, he spat. That sounds unnecessarily dramatic. The sash he now wore at all times emitted a tiny, disapproving chime. A consort should not use sarcasm during pre-contest protocols. Got it. I'll be solemnly terrified then. Within the hour, he was seated in the observation chamber, flanked by 2 ceremonial guards whose uniforms resembled sentient kitchen appliances. Across the room, Zephyr stood still, composed, except for a slight narrowing of the eyes that meant she was either deeply annoyed or calculating the gravitational pulse of the situation. Possibly both. Do I even want to know who's coming? Felix whispered. Zephyr didn't turn. Lord Veskin of Neptune's outer coalition. He's strategic, photogenic, and unfortunately, not an idiot. So naturally we're now in a space version of The Bachelor. Veskin entered with the smug grace of someone who believed gravity bent just a little more politely around him. His cloak glimmered with bioluminescent symbols that spelled virtue and, for some reason, recalibrated protein. He approached with a bow that might have insulted 3 separate cultures depending on tilt. Zephyra, he said, voice like warm engine oil. You summoned me. I did not. I heard your consort was chosen via childhood jest, he said, eyeing Felix like a puddle he might step in. I've come to challenge the bond under Eclipse Clause 8. Felix leaned toward Zephyra. Tell me that's just a board game. Zephyr sighed. Any vow made outside an official bonding quadrant must be reaffirmed under a dual eclipse if disputed. It is the law. Of course it is, Felix muttered. Nothing says romantic closure like ancient orbital litigation. The Council of Elders convened. They wore hats shaped like cosmic spirals, which made Felix intensely self-conscious about his entirely non-hat-based head. The lead elder, a semi-sentient mist named Grand Elder Thal, floated forward. It is decided, Thal declared. There shall be a trial of eclipses. Both suitors shall undergo 3 contests, one of wisdom, one of strength, and one of emotional resonance. The bond shall be awarded to the one most aligned with the matron's inner flame. Felix raised a hand. Do I get to vote? No, Thal replied, but you may snack. The first trial began in the Library of the Ancients, a rotating archive cube the size of a moon, containing every known version of every story ever told. Their challenge, decode the original form of the first Orion parable, currently locked in a language known only to extinct jellyfish. Veskin immediately activated a linguistic AI shaped like a condescending flower. Felix, panicking, stared at the ancient glyphs until his comm bracelet blinked. Incoming hint. You once drew these in mashed potatoes. He blinked. Childhood dinner, age 9. Bored, he'd stabbed his food into spirals just like these while pretending to summon aliens. He leaned in, traced the mashed potato memory onto the page, and the parable unfolded. Zephyr's smile was small but unmistakable. Round 1 goes to the one with carbohydrate intuition, Thal intoned. Veskin grunted. Felix offered him a high five. He declined. The second trial was held in the arena of kinetic truth, a zero-gravity space filled with levitating platforms and robotic opponents trained in 47 types of polite violence. Do I get a weapon? Felix asked. You get a spatula, said the judge, to symbolize humility. Veskin was handed a plasma spear that vibrated with repressed ambition. The contest began. Felix immediately tripped over a low-orbit platform and bounced off a wall into a surprise trampoline. The audience gasped. Felix cartwheeled through the air, hit a target unintentionally, and knocked Veskin into a disorienting spin. Felix landed in a heap. His spatula dinged against the final gong. Silence, then a roar of laughter. He won by accident, one elder muttered. True chaos is a form of strength, said another. Zephyr gave him a thumbs up. Felix returned it, upside down. The final trial was the most bizarre. Emotional resonance was judged by standing inside the hall of echoing light, while telepathic crystals played back your thoughts and feelings in real time, like therapy crossed with karaoke. Veskin entered first. The room glowed blue. His feelings echoed as sharp, cold pulses. Duty, honor, ambition, a very detailed internal calendar. The crystals hummed politely. Then Felix stepped in. Instantly, the room flooded with a chaotic mess of emotions. Awkward affection, guilt, curiosity, the urge to run, the urge to stay, nostalgia of Martian playgrounds, guilt about unfinished laundry, panic about falling in love, wonder that someone had actually remembered him. Hope. The light turned golden. The crystals played a strange sound. A laugh. Zephyr's. Your resonance is inconsistent, said Thal. Welcome to being human, Felix muttered. Thal turned to Zephyr. The decision lies with you. Zephyr stepped forward. Veskin is brilliant, but Felix remembers things that don't make sense to remember. He stumbles into clarity. He doesn't know the rituals, but he makes them new. He gave me a vow by accident and kept it anyway. She turned to Felix. I choose the one who stayed. Veskin bowed stiffly. So be it. As he left, Felix whispered, You can keep the spear. Number, I'll take the spatula. It's a better story. Later that evening, alone with Zephyr under the twin moons, Felix lay beside her on a hovering platform of soft light, watching stars drift by. So, he said, I survived a trial based on childhood food, cosmic gymnastics, and telepathic mood lighting. You did well. Do you think this bond is real? I mean, not just by culture or law, but really real. Zephyr looked at him. I don't know, but I've never laughed this much in my life, and that feels like a good place to start. Felix smiled. Promise me something? What? That if we do this, you'll never let me cook again. She laughed. Not even under combat conditions? Especially not then. Felix stood in front of a mirror made of refracted stardust, watching his reflection fidget with the ceremonial collar that refused to sit straight. It kept blinking messages like, align to dignity, and you are slouching in front of history. He growled and pressed the emergency calm button on his sash, which responded by playing a lullaby in whale frequencies. This unfortunately triggered a passing ceremonial attendant to collapse in tearful awe. He tried to whisper, I don't think I'm emotionally prepared to be sacred. The sash replied, It is too late. You are already trending. Outside, the entire capital of Orion Prime floated in a slow spiral through the atmosphere, resplendent with banners that shifted color based on public sentiment. Most currently read, Chi Felifra and Long Live the Spoon Vow. One in error still read, Congratulations on the dental merger. Zephyr entered without fanfare, wearing armor that shimmered like compressed galaxies and a half smile that calmed Felix more than any neural sedative. She took one look at him and straightened his collar with a tiny tug. "You look like a frightened diplomat penguin," she said. "Thank you. I was going for cosmic penguin overlord, but I'll take it." Her fingers lingered briefly at his shoulder. "Are you ready?" "I'm not sure I understand what's actually happening." "The ritual of completion," she said. "You recite your vow under the binary moons, and we cross the threshold of alignment. There will be music, metaphors, and an unsettling amount of audience participation." Felix inhaled. "Does anything explode?" "Just the bonding candles. Unless someone mishandles the oxygen density, in which case everything explodes." "Great. Traditional then." They stepped out onto the ceremonial platform, suspended above a pool of bioluminescent water that occasionally whispered encouragement. The crowd, Orion dignitaries, Earth envoys, a suspicious number of floating sentient pastries, and at least one confused Neptunian goat, fell silent. Grand Elder Thol materialized in a shimmer of mist and mildly judgmental energy. "Let the vow be spoken." Zephyr turned to Felix. "Do you, Felix Merrick, keeper of the spoon vow, acknowledge this bond freely, despite all confusion, bureaucratic error, and interspecies miscommunication?" "I do," Felix said. "I didn't mean to start it, but I mean to finish it." Gasps, applause. One pastry exploded. "And do you, Zephyr of Orion, High Matron Designate, accept this bond not because it was made, but because you choose to renew it now?" "I do," she said. "I remember who you were. I see who you are." Thal nodded. "Let the final light pass between them." Two attendants floated in, holding ceremonial bonding candles, essentially small, unstable fusion cores dressed in ribbons. Felix and Zephyr reached out together. The flames flared, met, and stabilized into a hovering sphere that projected images from their journey: the Martian playground, the mind-link trials, the arena of kinetic truth, and an unfortunate shot of Felix mid-sneeze. The crowd stood, touched. Even Talzena dabbed one eye with a plasma-proof handkerchief. Felix leaned in. "Are we officially married now?" "Technically," Zephyr whispered. "You're my co-sovereign of 2 moons and 1 largely symbolic asteroid." Felix's eyes widened. "Does that come with a salary?" "Number. But you can rename the asteroid." "Done. I shall call it Regret Crumb." Later, after speeches, gift exchanges, and a brief interpretive dance by sentient fog, Felix and Zephyr sat alone in a quiet observatory high above the city. The sash finally deactivated with a gentle sigh. Felix looked out at the stars. "This all started because I was bored during recess." Zephyr leaned against his shoulder. "And now? I think I accidentally found someone who turns my worst ideas into a life worth living." "You have grown," she said. "You show up. You risk awkwardness. You even wear the sash without complaint now." "I bribed it," she smiled. "You've learned diplomacy." "Only with accessories," he muttered. "Still working on people." Zephyr grew quiet. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't remembered?" "I'd probably be somewhere in a fungal database, sneezing my way through an uneventful life," he said. "And you?" "I might have risen in rank, taken a safe consort, spoken only in ceremony." Felix nudged her. "So basically, tragic prestige drama." "Very tragic. No spoon jokes. No falling into lava kitchens. No confused eels. No one to challenge the gravity rituals with irreverent dancing." Felix reached for her hand. "Thank you for taking me seriously." She squeezed it. "Thank you for coming back." Above them, the twin moons shifted into perfect alignment. The stars pulsed in soft waves, as if the galaxy itself were exhaling. On Earth, the story became legend. The boy who proposed as a joke, and the alien girl who believed him. But on Orion Prime, it was not a story. It was a bond, imperfect, improbable, and deeply, defiantly real. And somewhere far away, on a minor asteroid newly named Regret Crumb, a plaque was placed that read, "Here began the union that spooned the stars."